I've pulled up the Jaguars website, and at the very top of the page, there's a message that says, your 2017 season ticket renewal plan is here. And on each side of that message, there's a picture of Tom Coughlin and a picture of Doug Marrone, and I think they're in competition to see who can look more miserable. And it's a tie.
Wow, Coughlin didn't win? That's impressive.
Yeah. Oh, Marrone can hold his own when it comes to looking miserable. Speaking of miserable, or the opposite of miserable, our good friend Mike Dempsey. I saw him up close. I was across the table from him. I was on his show on 1010XL. He joins us now. Mike, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing very well, Mike. How are you?
Good. Do you get the same impression I do that Doug Marrone and Tom Coughlin are in a competition as to who can be more miserable?
It's certainly Coughlin's influence is being shown on the face of Doug Marrone. What a terrible picture. I mean, even for Tom Coughlin, who's had some terrible photos taken of him, go back to when he took the Giants up to Green Bay and he was all red-faced. Now, I don't know if it could have come out much worse, but maybe that's kind of the attitude they're trying to project. No nonsense. The era of get along Gus Bradley is over with, and there's a new sheriff in town. Or
is it just, you know what, we've had a few weeks now to take a look at the roster, and this is the result. But here's the thing. The roster isn't bad. The roster is good. There's promise on the defensive side of the ball. And I think last year, offensively, for whatever reason, we all had expectations that were way too high.
Well, the expectations came from the fact that Blake Bortles had 35 touchdown passes the year before. Allen Robinson had 1,400 yards and 14 touchdowns and went to the Pro Bowl. And you thought at least the passing game is going to put up some numbers. They brought in Chris Ivory, but they could never get the running game going. Ivory had an injury that sidelined him early in the season, and they didn't find out about it really until game day of week one. And, you know, that kind of set the running game back a little bit. Bortles regressed last year. And, you know, as much as we think the defense, Mike, is in position to take a nice step forward, we thought the same about the offense last year. I do agree the personnel is there for an improvement, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, but they've got to go out and do it. We're well past the point of, you know, getting too excited in the offseason about anything anymore. This team needs to show results during the regular season.
And last year, I remember vividly, Mike, coming off of that 35-touchdown performance, there was plenty of hype and discussion about all the time that Blake Bortles was spending with his receivers, and they're bonding even more, and it's going to be even better. What are they doing this year to try to resurrect Bortles and get more out of guys like Allen Robinson and Allen Hurns?
Well, I think he's going back to what he did more the year before, which, you know, last year I think, you know, not to throw this all at the feet of Greg Olson, but when he was the offensive coordinator, he believed more in working with the guys that you were going to throw to, as in Allen Robinson, Allen Hurns, Marquise Lee, those type guys, and just throwing a lot in the offseason. And you should do some of that when the time allows, but Bortles, unfortunately, needs fine-tuning on his mechanics. And I guess, you know, look, Tom Brady, some of the best go and get it done occasionally with Tom House out there on the West Coast. But Bortles, I think, is going to be a guy that needs to have his mechanics monitored, unfortunately, every offseason. You know, they just break down. He doesn't throw spirals half the time. It's really amazing how poorly he just completes the physical act of throwing the football sometimes to make it this far to the National Football League where you were a top 3 pick. But unless, Mike, he gets back to where he was, or at least closer to where he was, and builds off of that from 2 years ago, this Jaguar team isn't going to go anywhere unless they get better quarterback play.
What kind of a shelf life does Bortles have now as he enters year 4 and Tom Coughlin is calling the shots and Doug Marrone is coaching the team?
Well, I think it's going to be, you know, less than it was before if he's really struggling, if they feel like there's a better option to come in and win games. But the way this offseason is set up right now, with the re-signing of Chad Henne last week, you've got Brandon Allen, who you drafted out of Arkansas in the 6th round last year, didn't play a snap, but I think they like his raw ability. I can't see them adding much more in the way of competition at quarterback. I think this is a make-or-break year for Blake Bortles. I think they're going to do everything they can to improve the offensive line, to provide a running game, to take some pressure off him, to lean on that defense, and see if they can make, I don't know if turn him into a game manager is the right thing, but make him a more efficient quarterback and not put so much of the weight on his shoulders. If it doesn't work, I think he's out in Jacksonville after this year. But I think he's basically going to get this year, and it's going to take something catastrophic to get him out of the lineup.
He's Mike Dempsey of 1010XL in Jacksonville. What attracted the Jaguars to Brandon Albert, and how much better do you think he will make the offensive line?
Well, that's the question. I mean, obviously they think he's an upgrade over what they could have had in Kelvin Beachum, because they could have had Beachum back for a 4-year, $40 million extension that was built into the contract that he signed last offseason. It was at the team's behest, and they opted not to pick that up. So they think they're going to get a more accomplished guy if he's healthy. Obviously, they feel satisfied with where his health is at right now. Likewise, the Dolphins do with Julius Thomas. And, you know, even though these guys are not being traded strictly for each other, it certainly appears to be that's what this swap is going to end up, with Miami sending a 7th-rounder this year to Jacksonville and Jacksonville returning the favor next year. So they think Brandon Albert's going to be an upgrade over Kelvin Beachum. I think in pass and run blocking particularly, even though he's not known as a great run blocking left tackle. But I think they still need work to do or have work to do, Mike, on the interior of the offensive line. Like a lot of teams, they recognize it's a deep guard group in free agency with proven guys out there. I'd be very surprised if they're not aggressive trying to go after at least one, if not two, starters on the interior in free agency.
Doug Marrone goes from being the offensive line coach to the head coach, defensive coordinator still in place. Do we expect the defense to be any different from a schematic standpoint this year?
Well, you know, we're all kind of guessing on that. It's not like, I think they're going to be a lot more tight-lipped with Tom Coughlin at the top. But, you know, we'll find out if Todd Wash felt like he was restricted with Gus Bradley's vision of how that defense should be run. Gus is not a big believer in blitzing heavily. He wants to get pressure with his 4 down linemen, and that's great if you've got 4 down linemen that can accomplish that. But the Jags haven't had that for the most part in recent years. So we're all curious to see. We think it's going to be more of a traditional 4-3. You know, they played with the big end in that system. They had Red Bryant the first year under Gus Bradley, and obviously Jared Odrick the last couple of years along with Tyson Alualu. I think they'd like to bring Alualu back. They just let Odrick go. But I think they're going to be looking for more of a traditional 4-3. I think there are a lot of defensive ends near the top of the draft, or at least in the first couple rounds. I could absolutely see them going that direction if they don't address that in free agency as well.
Mike Dempsey of 1010XL in Jacksonville here with us on PFT Live. I still can't get past the fact that Tom Coughlin is stepping into a role he's never had before. He clearly still wanted to keep coaching when he was fired by the Giants. He still wanted to keep coaching as of this year. How does he embrace what he's doing now and not constantly be backseat driving for Doug Marrone?
Well, that's going to be up to Tom Coughlin to figure out how he's going to handle that. But, you know, he was the architect of the franchise, Mike. You go back, he basically wore every hat in the beginning. He was in charge of personnel as well as, you know, coaching the team, you know, selecting, you know, the practice times. I mean, every little detail, he built this organization from the ground up. So I think he can handle it. It's a question, you know, does that itch get too hard to scratch? He says it won't. You know, I guess all we can do is sit back and watch. But I do think he has a coach, like you pointed out from the top, who's kind of in his mold in Doug Marrone. I think those guys are going to see eye to eye. I think there's going to be a lot of communication between them. There's a lot of influence of Tom Coughlin on this coaching staff. Guys like Perry Fuel, who worked with him over the years, among the first hires that came in. So he has an influence, and his influence is going to permeate everything in the organization. But as of right now, I think he's going to try his best to sit back on game day and throughout the course of the week and let Doug Marrone do his job. That's what you hire a guy for, and we'll see if it works out. It's definitely a combustible mix, and if the Jags get off to a slow start, you're probably going to hear some of the fan base call for Tom Coughlin to move down from the front office. I think he's going to resist doing that, but it could get interesting if they have another poor record this year.
What is the overall mood of the fan base? Because when the team was just expected to be bad every year, they supported the team. They showed up. They didn't grouse. Last year, when there was finally expectation of a playoff berth and it didn't happen, then all of a sudden they become angry. Where does it stand right now?
I think they're justifiably angry because there's been, you know, it's not just been a 1 or 2 year thing. This has been going on for years and years and years of mediocrity or take, you know, they look at this regime, Dave Caldwell, Gus Bradley, and they ask, did we get any better since the first day you came in here? You can argue, yeah, the talent on the roster is better, but the record's not, and ultimately that's what you're going to care about. So I think this fan base is past the point of getting too excited in the offseason. So it's hard not to get excited when your team signs a big player, makes a draft pick that you like, and there's going to be normal excitement. But I think they're much more in a show-me mode than a we expect this to happen. I think they're a lot more skeptical. They're hopeful because of the presence of Tom Coughlin in the organization, but a lot of the same coaches back on the coaching staff that didn't lead them to many victories over the last couple of years, at least the key guys, the coordinators, and now the head guy was the interim head coach at the end of the year. So, Mike, I think they're just, very cautious. They don't want to stick their neck out. They've had expectations. I think really the last couple of seasons that it would start to get better, and it hasn't. So while they think it really can't get any worse, they're not going to believe it's going to get better until they're proven that that the Jags are actually out there winning games. I think they're going to say, "Show me this time," instead of "We expect you to make this big leap."
I've saved the most important question for last. Has Tom Coughlin already commenced the process of getting rid of those god-awful two-tone helmets?
I don't like the helmets either. I think the sleeves are maybe worse, but no. Well, as far as I know, I'll be honest with you. I work in the building almost every day, Monday through Friday, doing my radio show out of there, and I don't think I've seen Tom Coughlin since his introductory press conference. So for all I know, he's hand painting them himself. He's kind of a detail guy. Wouldn't shock me 100%. I don't expect that to happen, but it wouldn't completely shock me.
As long as they're one color, I don't care who paints them. I just want one color as the base color for the helmet. All right, Mike, thanks for some of your time. Great information as always. We'll talk soon.
Anytime, Mike. Thanks.